Hey everybody, I hope you're doing great. This is Dr. Flight, and this video is going to be part of our chapter material that focuses on creating and maintaining sustainable competitive advantages. And so this video is going to walk through some of the underlying components that we think of when we want to create advantages in the marketplace and in the industry, and how those advantages manifest themselves. Typically, when we look at this material, we focus on three kind of areas where advantage is found or advantage is created, whether it's from a industry perspective, and a lot of times that's driven by cost. So a cost-based a perspective of gaining advantage, a market-based or differentiation form of advantage, or a marketing advantage when we think of doing the marketing function. Again, this is kind of a traditional model that a lot of textbooks and folks will see when we talk about gaining competitive advantages or thinking about how will you compete. It usually is based on a cost structure that you've identified that gives you a financial advantage against your competitors, a differentiation advantage, or a product or service component where you distinguish yourself differently from your competitors based on the value proposition you offer, or the execution of your marketing components, including branding and things like that. So just to begin with, though, competitive advantage exists when a firm has industry influence due to some type of superior performance. So again, this could be a financial performance where internally they've structured their costs so that they can be more efficient, or it could be a market-based advantage because they simply offer a better product than others do, or a more unique product anyways, or an execution of strategy superiority, because they do things simply better. They brand themselves better, they position themselves better, they have interfirm relationships that are better, and things like that. So that's really kind of the basis of where some of this starts. And just to give you some examples in each of these three areas, again, when we talk about gaining an industry advantage, that advantage is come from or brought on from production volume, scale, and scope issues. So if you have larger capacity and you're able to use that, then that helps drive costs down. Superior profit margins, again, largely driven by reducing costs or increasing customers' willingness to pay prices that you set. Larger revenue streams, volume in revenue. Again, this idea of forming interrelated relationships with other firms, which could also be in the marketing advantage area too. General costs. Different types of costs you incur, whether it's production costs or fixed overhead costs, things like that, marketing, sales expenses, and your efficiency in using your expenditures as a return on investment. So whenever you put something in, money into something, you want to know what the rate of return is for that amount that you're putting in. So ROI, return on investment, is something we routinely look at, and those again all drive your ability to be financially superior to your competitors, which is a form of advantage. In the marketplace, we talk a lot about the actual products, and how our products differ from each other. So if you compete on differentiation bases, then it means that your product performs differently, uniquely, and probably better than your competitors. And so that's a value benefit type of a thing, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. When we talk about cost here, we talk about the price that the customer pays. And we always balance price with what you pay for a product with the benefits that you receive. So being able to have that ratio be appropriate is again how customers define value, and that's something that we can form again a competitive advantage over the industry, our competitors. We can form an advantage over our competitors if we perform better in delivering customer value. Market share, another market indicator of superior performance, and also sales volume, the amount of products that you sell, that just the volume of units sold can push you into a superior position, and you can again leverage that to do other things as a point of advantage. We talk about marketing performance as again a standard that will set you apart, where you might base your business model on. Could include things like brand development and brand equity. There are some companies whose products are average, who may not be particularly large in size, but they have incredibly good brand equity. Like, people know their brand, they understand their brand, the brand's well defined, people think very positively of the brand. And the fact that they have a lot of brand equity allows them to gain advantages, but also performance in other marketing aspects too. The whole positioning strategy that you do, your ability to do market research and capitalize on data and information lends you an advantage. Again, I mentioned interfirm relationships. That's kind of a relationship marketing concept, is how you relate to other companies, particularly in the space where we think of distribution. We look at suppliers, we look at distributors, we look at other businesses that we work with to bring value to the customer, to deliver value to the customer. Those are all formed in essence by the relationship you have with those other companies. And so if you do that particularly well, again, you can leverage that, and you that superior performance in that space, doing that allows you to gain advantages over your competitors. Okay, so again, kind of marry these three concepts together. One will help you in the other two areas, and vice versa, all the way around. And some companies again take a dominant view of maintaining a cost-based advantage, while others take a primary focus and dominant view of making a differentiation-based kind of space where you're going to be great, and then others in marketing. Okay, so we're going to walk through some of these concepts over the next few minutes and talk a little bit more about each of these areas independently, and just show some examples just to kind of flesh this out a little bit more. Because it really is a detailed kind of concept. But first, let's just talk about this whole idea of value. When we look at that market-based advantage, we talked about this thing where the customer's cost and the benefits they receive based on what they pay need to be in line with each other. And so what we have here is a display of price, so that's what the customer would pay, and this is for just a generic sports utility vehicle. And then on the x-axis, that down below, we have performance. So that's the performance of the vehicle, like how well does the vehicle work? What are our features? Are our features superior or not? And so to the left, it's going to be the fewer features that don't perform as well. To the right, more features that perform better. But as you increase the number of features and their performance, the cost of the vehicle goes up, as you would expect. But keep in mind, people understand that. Consumers understand that if you get more benefit, you can expect to pay more, and you will be willing to pay more. So the fair price line is where people find equal value. Even though the prices change, there's still the same level of value that's anticipated. Anything below the line would represent a good value. Anything above the line would represent a negative or a bad value based on the benefits you're receiving and the cost you have to give up. Okay, so again, if you're going to gain a relative advantage over your competitors, when we start thinking about the market, one concept that we have is delivering better performance, whether it's our product or our service, relative to the price that we're offering, in context of the price that we're offering or asking customers to pay. And again, if you are below that line there, then you're going to see an advantage over any competitor who's above that line. And again, this is kind of laying this out a little bit more. On the left of this image, we have two bar charts, both of which show this space called customer value. Now we have two different types of products. One is a product that has what we call a differentiation advantage. Now again, when we say that, what we mean is that the product's features are unique and they perform in a superior fashion. So I'm asking people to buy my product because the product functions better, has more benefits, it's a better quality product than others. That's my sales pitch to them. And you can see there's sort of this difference between the cost that the customer perceives and the benefits that they receive, and that's a positive gap that's there. Again, that says we're below that line, that midpoint line, and the customer is going to see value based on that. The other example posed here is the cost advantage product. Now this company here is saying, look, our features and our benefits may not be as good as the competitors, but our cost is lower. In other words, our price to you is lower. What we're going to charge you is less, so you shouldn't expect as many bells and whistles on this product that we're offering you. We're really targeting a different type of market segment, one that's a little bit more cost conscious, and so this is the product for you because we're in your price range. Now, if you look at the bar charts, you'll notice that the difference in customer value between these two product offerings is the same. It's the same difference in so both customers see equally good value in these two offerings, even though the prices are different. And what is kind of counterbalancing that, of course, are the benefits that each receives. So again, this is where we kind of look at these different strategies. I mentioned that cost advantage or cost-based strategy and differentiation about it, and that's how this sort of plays out. Now, when we say cost in this context, keep in mind we're talking specifically about what the customer sees, and this is a market-based kind of view of this. In a few minutes, we're going to talk about cost again, but it's going to be specifically from the company's perspective and their cost to produce a product. So we have two different uses of the word cost. Don't let that confuse you, but even though it can be, this is again through the lens of the customer, and that should really be price advantage. I wish that this was redone and better displayed to say that. Now let's add this third component and look at what we call marketing advantage. So again, we have this idea that, well, sometimes people don't just buy for price and they don't just buy for features. Sometimes it's the brand that they buy, the actual branding, the name, the imagery, the logo, the all the things that go along with the brand, the image of it, the personality of the brand, the community of the brand. That's a big selling point in a lot of different product categories. And maybe we deliver the product faster. Maybe we again have better elements that are market driven or marketing function driven, I guess I should say. And the customers may relish that. They may appreciate that. That's going to fall somewhere in the middle, though. That's not really. It's a little bit vaguer, right? We can't really just. It's harder to define what a marketing advantage is to the customer. But I think generally speaking, if the product is designed specifically for a customer, so there's a strong fit and positioning, and if the brand is exceptionally strong, then those elements help drive that value proposition And if you have a really strong brand, for instance, your product quality doesn't have to be as good. If you have a really strong brand, then your price doesn't have to be as low, if that makes sense, because the brand is carrying much of what's going on there and why the customer's buying that product. Okay, so the image on the right again kind of illustrates this tie between some financial outcome, in this case return on investment. So when a company puts money into promoting and developing and launching and producing or whatever the product, those costs return revenue. They return profits. And again, this illustration just kind of indicates that, look, the more customers value your product offer, the greater your return will be, or your benefits of investing in producing the product and advertising it and all this stuff. So bringing the product to market, the cost of doing that, the relative cost goes down as value to the customer goes up. That may be another way to kind of think about that. And you'll see these charts, more of them will pop up here, and we'll see this happen a little bit more. Okay, but let's go into this a little bit deeper, and let's just talk about these different advantages a little bit more. And now we're going to shift, in fact, from that price concept to the customer. Now, when we use the word cost, we're going to call it the firm's cost. So in other words, look, when the firm produces something, a product or a service, it costs money to do that. And when we lower that cost, whether it's through some type of an overhead or operational expense or ingredient costs or something, advertising, marketing, if we lower those costs, we gain advantages. So that's, again, moving forward, that's really the strategy, that we have these three kind of core strategies and one of which typically dominates a company's view on how they compete. So we'll look at that differentiation of products and then also this marketing advantage. We'll, again, just throw a few illustrations out here and kind of give you a little flavor for what these are all about. All right, so again, when we look at this cost advantage and profitability, there are all these different types of costs, right? On the last screen, we saw things like variable costs and fixed costs and marketing, sales expenses, and those types of costs, production costs. Again, not being an accounting / finance course, we don't need to go into how costs are accounted for and what costs are. Just know that it costs money to bring products to the market, and if we can control those costs or at least use them efficiently, then that's a good thing. So one way to do this is to consider what your cost to bring a product to market is relative to your competition. So when you use the concept of a cost of goods sold, and as a percentage of your revenue, say, so we sell a product, we have revenue that comes in. Some of that, though, is cost of goods sales. The rest is going to be built into some form of profit margin. So let's say in this fictitious company that 50% of your revenue is devoted to cost. So 50% might be profit margin, but half of your money went to producing the good. You sold the good. Half of what you made in gross revenue goes to expenses, basically. Well, how does that compare to the rest of the market? Well, let's just take some of our competitors' cost of goods sold and just compare it and do a little ratio. That's all this is doing, right? So the top part of this ratio is our cost of goods sold. The bottom part of this ratio is sort of an average for the industry. What would the industry average be, and where do we sit on that? When we take that ratio and multiply it by 100, or even if we don't, but when we do multiply it by 100, we create what's called an index. where the baseline is 100. So what ends up happening is the 100 score is average. Anything above 100, you're performing better than average, or excuse me, anything below 100, sorry, you're performing better than average. Anything above 100, you're performing below, because again, we want costs to be low. So costs are low. So this is a one that you might think is reversed a little bit. In this particular example, we see that our index for our costs relative to our competitors is a 77. You can clearly see that this is below 100. So we are operating more efficiently is basically what we're saying, because we're doing more with less money in terms of our cost structure. And the chart kind of indicates this a little bit, where if your cost index is and they have this reversed a little bit, because the scale goes from 130 to 70, if you see that. So when we're going left to right, we're not going up on cost advantage, we're going down, and this company is at 77. So you see the dot that's there, and so the way you look at this is, the lower your cost index, the lower your relative cost on goods sold is, the better your return on investment. And when we say return on investment, we're talking about how much money you spend relative to the revenue you bring in on any particular product. It makes sense, right? It makes sense that, clearly if you're spending less, you're more efficient with your business model. Your business model is more efficient at making money. And that's going to be an advantage that you'll have that others won't have, specifically in the marketplace. Okay, some other things that relate to this whole cost idea and driving costs down deals with volume and how many units you produce. This happens in two specific ways, though. So we know that there's efficiencies of scale. That's a term where, when we talk about scale, we talk about volume of production. When we go from a low volume of production up to a high volume of production, when we account for our costs per unit, then what we can do is we take our fixed costs, and we're able to spread our fixed costs over more units when we produce more units. So our fixed costs per unit go down for every subsequent unit produced. And therefore we see overall lower costs per unit. Right now, remember, when we do this, we're going to sell the product for the same price. Just because our costs are going down doesn't mean we lower our price. We could, but we don't have to. So as costs go down, as units go up, costs go down, but our price remains the same, meaning that our profit margin goes up every time we produce more units. Okay, so again, that's a scale thing. Same concept happens, only in a slightly different way when we talk about scope. Scope simply means that, in this context, it means that we're using our production and spreading it over more types of products. Not more of the same product, but more types of products. This is particularly true when we do platform production operations. So like if we have a piece of one product, or a part that goes into one product, but that same part can then go into other products, then all of a sudden, instead of producing that part for one product, we're producing it for all the others. And again, production costs go down per unit. And because we're using it in more applications, I guess is the best way to think about it. So in this one, we have some type of a component or a piece that's going into an automobile, a motorcycle, a lawnmower, snow blowers, pumps. Honda is a great company to think of, because they have all these products. And when Honda has a design or a part, they might be able to use that in many different products. So when the product line is wide, deep, big mix, then the scope effects again help drive costs down quite a bit. Okay, so again, expressed here, we have the scale effect, and the scope effect, in other words. And again, you can pause this at any time that you want. Ultimately, when we think about doing something more often, one of the natural concepts that we sort of refer to, and I think it's an outcome of just doing something a lot, is this idea of a learning curve, or in this case, an experience curve. When you do something more often, you do it better each time, and you get more experience, and you gain confidence, and you learn how to do whatever it is you're doing better each subsequent time, which means that your overall costs, the time, the energy, and things like that, um, go down naturally. So, learning effects or experience curves happen by doing something a lot. And if you are pushing scale or scope, then you're gaining from an experiential type of piece as well. Yeah, so this kind of again, ways we think of driving down costs. The last kind of concept here in the marketing space, and the volume of marketing that you do, is similarly found in both scale and in scope. So when we do something more, again, our costs are going to be diffused across all the things that we do. So, two examples here of companies that have broad products. So remember that scope idea, where we have broad product lines and we're able to duplicate marketing efforts across those product lines. Now, in this case, it's not production, but it's like things like putting products on shelves. If I have like Tide or Cheer and Dash, the P&G detergent line example, if I have an employee go into the store stocking the shelves, it's far more efficient to have them stock all those brands at once rather than have several people go in stocking them separately. And so the more brands that one person can stock on the shelf reduces costs of distribution dramatically. And so this is kind of this idea that the more that they're able to do, the lower the overall cost of that particular activity in marketing. Advertising, another example with Campbell's Soup. When Campbell's goes to a media outlet, they buy time, and instead of buying time for tomato soup and split pea soup and clam chowder and all these, they buy one block of, for all their products. And then after they make this enormous purchase, they then divvy up the time by each different type of soup they want to advertise. Now, the benefit is you get an incredible discount if you buy a large volume of ad time at once. If you were going to buy individual ads one at a time, it'd be very expensive, but media companies want to sell their inventory to you in big chunks of time. So again, by bulking the buy of media time, the company can dramatically lower their marketing costs, and gain that type of advantage. So again, it is a leverage point for volume and scope. So the more that you do, obviously, the more efficient you become in your buys and your practices and things like that. And so again, when we talk about costs, there are lots of ways to reduce costs and gain a cost advantage over your competitors. Your goals here are to, again, increase your profit margin and run more efficiently and effectively with the money that you have relative to your competition. Okay, so that's this kind of cost advantage piece to look at there. Second area here we'll just touch on for a couple moments is this notion of product differentiation and being able to indicate and highlight how your products are different and unique from your competitors. And again, the stress here is that this is what you'll use to sell your product to your market, to sell your product to your customers. And largely, we kind of looked at this already when we start looking at perceptual maps. But just take this for a moment. Say we've got a product here And if you look at the chart down below, you'll see that there are these three different elements or attributes of a product that are seem to be important, like reliable performance, ease of use, and product life. And then each one of those has sort of a relative importance. So they're not equally important. They're not all worth the same to the customer. It appears like reliable performance is clearly the most important thing. And then what we do is we go out and we do surveys, and we measure people's perception of the product, of our brand and our competitors' brands, on these three different dimensions. So again, this is something that we would do when we form a perceptual map. It's the same type of process. It's just displayed a little bit differently here. It's in a chart, and it's in a grid instead of a picture or a graphic, in terms of how these companies perform. But let's compare these, and see that our business on the first item is a 7.7, maybe on a 10-point scale or something like that. But it's clearly better than our competitors, A, B, and C. Now on the second component, 5.6, it's kind of in the middle, but then back on the third component, product life, it is back up again at 7.6, outperforming our competitors. So taking this data together, again, we can create some type of, and multiplying it by the relative importance, which would be a weight. It's a weighted average is basically what we're creating in relative to our competition. And kind of the math behind this isn't really super important. What is that we're creating a number that measures our relative uniqueness and superiority or inferiority, depending on what it is, to our competitors on this type of thing. Again, just like the example we had before, this creates an index. This has been an indexed thing where 20 represents 20 over. It's not a negative number, but 100 is the average for the industry, and so anything above 100 is just a superior like performance level. Anything below 100 is inferior, and the overall score that this company gets is a 120, which means in essence they're 20 basis points better than average. It's more or less what you could think of, I guess, here. So again, the data suggests that when you outperform on benefits, the customer gets greater value. Now, what we don't have here is price, so we could add to this model and put price in, and we could do a relative kind of value thing when price is balanced into this. That would actually be really interesting to do. And then what we can do is though chart and see how profitability follows this notion of product value and differentiation and how we do things differently. Okay, so again, we're looking at how our product performs in the eyes of the consumer, and do we have an advantage in that space, and should that be where we are? Now, clearly, if we're to have an advantage, if we're at 120 and 100 is average, then we could very well justify a higher price and charge our customers more, and by doing so, potentially increase our profit margin. So that's a good thing. Now, again, whenever we add benefits, whenever our product works better than anybody else's, usually we spend more to create that better product. So usually our costs are a little higher. So profit margins aren't guaranteed, but they're possible. It's something that we could look to. We can do the exact same thing if we move forward in a service context. If you want to pause this, you can, but it's really the same story. When this slide kind of walks through a service environment and service elements, but the thing is the same, where we have sort of this relative importance of each of these three service components, and then our perceived score on those along with our competitors' perceived scores on those in order to create some type of kind of comparative score and an index. In this case, the index rates them, or they're rated on the index as a 127, so 27 basis points basically above average, or what the industry norm would be. So again, we have a clear advantage on service performance in this particular example for FedEx. Okay, so two great ways to think about this. The last one, again, kind of in this area, we may include branding and the brand advantage and profitability kind of concepts. Now, brand is measured a little bit differently. Brand value. It's something called brand equity is really what we're measuring. And there is actually, I don't know, a couple dozen maybe different variations and ways to measure brand equity. A lot of people look at the image, the perceptions, the associations brands people have with brands, those types of things. Here we have two components that are being used to measure brand equity. One is respect. Is your brand respected? And two is quality. Is your brand known for quality? And those are two very solid ideas associated with the value of a brand. So if we want to calculate brand value, we could use these two items. Now, again, there are many other items too, but these are two good ones. This example, again, kind of like the other ones we had, we have kind of the score or perception of our brand versus other brands we compete against. And in this case, our brand is highly respected, a 34, so a 134 would be the index. And again, that's significantly higher than the average. We kind of on the chart on the left kind of helps us look at brand, and some of the axes change a little bit. I'm not sure I love these charts, other than to know that the more brand value you have, the greater the price premium you can charge. That's really that left chart. So when one of the takeaways with this is if you produce a better product functionally, you can charge more because people will pay more for that performance. If your brand has greater value in the marketplace, you can charge more because of brand equity. And the value that you've developed in that brand. People will pay more for a brand they know versus a brand they don't know. And again, that translates into potentially higher profit margins, which everybody loves and everybody wants. Okay, so again, this kind of sits in this differentiation advantage area. Brand reputation, service quality, and product benefits. All in this middle section, which then leaves us to this third area. And again, remember, this is the standing theory that's driven by everybody, is you have one of three dominant kind of positions on how you're going to compete: lowering your costs, managing your costs, creating points of differentiation between yourself and your competitors, products and service and value proposition, and then finally this marketing advantage. The marketing advantage means that because of how you do marketing, you are a leader in your space. And there's lots of different ways we can do that, but a lot of times it surrounds the actual things that you're doing in marketing. So, what is it that we do in marketing that makes us unique? We've talked about product differentiation. Okay, so that's one thing. We talked about brand differentiation. That's a second thing. But there are three others that are here too. Three of the four P's. The brand differentiation obviously isn't one of our four P's, but doing things different promotionally, setting yourselves apart as a function, as a result of how you build awareness and promote and advertise, stuff like that. Differentiating yourself based on how you distribute or deliver or bring the product to market, and then deviations in how you set price and pricing models that are unique and different, that again would be unlike other things that you do. So I know we've talked a lot about product differentiation. One thing we could also extend that idea with when we talk about product management is how many different products you offer. We talked about this a little bit when we do scope. Remember, we talked about scope saying, look, the more products you offer, the lower your costs tend to be. So think of product lines, and if you have lots of product lines, then you're more efficient and your ROIs go up. And again, this is kind of, we heard that earlier, but this just kind of re-emphasizes that sort of idea. And in this case, there's three different stages that are displayed, presumably of the product life cycle. So early, middle, and late stages of the product life cycle. Just imagine that, and think about a company that has a narrow product line versus a broad product line. And this is very efficient early on. Now, later in the product life cycle, a lot of times companies start deleting products within a line and they become more efficient when they do that. But in the early stages, if you're first launching a product, having a wide array of products in your product line is better, or it's more efficient, if you will, to be able to do that. So that's kind of one of those ideas. But again, remember, there are other elements, and these just list a few. This is not exhaustive by any means. Product development. So the product development process is a series of steps companies use to be able to develop and create new ideas and bring them to the market. It's a very, very detailed process and takes a lot of practice. The learning curve is extremely high on that process. The more you do it, the better you become. And if you're really, really good at developing and creating and launching new products, you'll clearly gain an advantage by doing so. Same thing with advertising. If you have a knack for advertising and promoting and developing awareness and things like that, you're going to gain an advantage over your competitors. If your ad campaigns continuously have good reviews, if they're very attention grabbing, if they're memorable, all that, then I mean, if you're good at doing that, then you're going to be an advantage by doing that. The third area that, again, these are not all things you could do, but these are kind of big ideas, is when you become more efficient and effective at distributing your product, you gain market advantages too. There are two ways we measure this. I highlighted them in red, kind of in the middle of the screen there. Two metrics. One would be share of shelf. So when you go into a store, the products are displayed. We call that a shelf facing, and the percentage of space on that shelf that has your products is your share of shelf. Now, obviously, when you go in a store, you want as much share of shelf as you can get, because you want your products on full display, plus it crowds out your competitors and pushes them out. If you're able to command more space, then you have more power in the market. So that's like one measure of your ability to leverage advantage in the marketplace through distribution. Another one is called distribution intensity. This is the case where when you bring a product to market, we look at the percentage of the market who has the product available to them. And as that approaches 100, your intensity increases. That's where intensity comes from. Some companies specifically have a low intensity model if you're a luxury good, something like that. But a lot of products, the goal is to reach as many people with your product as possible. And so you want that percentage as high as it can be. So if 85, 90% of the market has access to your product, that would be pretty high. That would be a pretty intense, if you will, type of a thing. Yep, and so that's kind of one thing. The last one we'll kind of mention here is, and it's really hard to know where this fits in, but market share, and where market share should be. So market share is often kind of an outcome thing, where we do all these activities to affect market share. But the fact is, the more market share you have, the more power you have in the marketplace among your competitors. I guess the idea is collectively, if you're working your marketing program, then you're going to be gaining this market share. And as you gain market share, you gain power to negotiate with partners, and the whole dynamic of the industry structure changes as your market share changes. So that is in part what we're talking about here. And this calculation that is shown again compares your relative market share to that of everybody else. And that's what it's called, relative market share. It is a little bit like a concentration ratio. So if we look at this thing, we take our market share and divide it by the average share of the industry or our top competitors, then that bottom piece, though, the denominator section of that calculation, is a concentration ratio. It is how much power is concentrated among the three largest competitors. Obviously, this does not include you. In this example, this is Google, and there are three other competitors out there. Google's market share is enormous. This is obviously a very dated kind of example. They're still enormous today, though, in terms of the percentage of people who use Google search engines versus others. And so at the time, 65% of searches were performed on a Google search. And then the average of those others would be the average of that 16, 14, and 3%. So if we divide those two, the 65% divided by the average of the top three, you're going to get 99, or I don't know what it is. I guess it's 19.9, and then multiply that by 100, you get 199. And they did their ratio. I mean, they created an index. That's all it is an index. Anything again above 100 is going to be strong. They're clearly have enormous power in the marketplace. We could do the same calculation, though, for the other competitors, and calculate what their relative market share is as well, if you wanted to do that. So again, this is an outcome variable that you're going to see as a result of doing all your marketing really, really well. You're going to gain market share, and this will be one of these forms of competition or forms of competitive advantage that you use. Okay, so 4 elements to focus on. Then these will be quick and they'll be easy. Number 1, continue to create unique and valued products. Remember, differentiation is a super big component of this, so we can't lose sight of what that means to customers in terms of doing something new to get yourself to stand apart from others. Number 2, continue to monitor and understand the unique nature of your customers. Customers' interests and motivations shift and change over time. So being able to recognize that and being able to adapt to those is vitally important. The caution is, if you have big market share, if you're a company with a lot of market share, a lot of time, or oftentimes, the tendency is to become complacent and not worry about these minute changes or shifts in the marketplace. The problem is other companies are going to come in, recognize that, and they're going to start eroding your market share because you're not paying attention to that. So understand that market, know that market. Number 3, continue to create customer linkages through customer relationship management. So CRM programs are amazingly good at taking data and guiding you towards a relationship that's deeper with your customer, and that would be a linkage. The more linkages and the bond with customers that you create, the stronger the bond, the better things happen. You become far more profitable when you create a strong bond with your customers as opposed to a weak one. So work on that, keep that going. And then from the brand value and equity component, don't forget about this idea of brand credibility. Brand credibility is all about, does the brand do what it says? Is it believable? Is it honest? We use this term true sometimes. Is it true as opposed to fake? That again, it creates an enormous amount of of loyalty and positive things, in the sense that customers will resist leaving you. They will not go to your competitors as quickly. They will be willing to spend more money with you. They'll forgive you more quickly if you make a mistake. I mean, there's a whole bunch of great things that happen as a result of being a having a very true and honest and sincere is a good word, and believable market facing or perception. And so, anyways, 4 elements here to think about, and we covered a lot in this video. I know this is like really big theory. Actually, there's a lot driving the ideas in this video. I know this video is longer, but there's a lot to it that really matters. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Look forward to any comments that you have. Let me know if you have, any questions. Thanks.